Stop scrolling for a second, because this may be the moment you look back on later and realize something was trying to reach you before it was too late. You have felt it lately, haven't you? That strange heaviness that follows you into quiet rooms. The exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. The feeling that something in your life has been slowly slipping out of place while nobody around you seems to notice. Maybe tonight you are lying in bed staring at the ceiling with your phone glowing inches from your face, pretending you are distracted when deep down you already know something feels wrong. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just wrong in a quiet way that is difficult to explain to anyone else. You tried to brush it off. You told yourself it was stress. Bills. Work. Bad timing. Maybe you even laughed around other people today while carrying something heavy inside your chest the entire time. But when the room finally became silent again, the feeling came back. That feeling that you were standing too close to losing something important. And what makes this harder is that you cannot fully explain what you are afraid of. It is not just one event. It is the accumulation of everything. The delayed answers. The closed doors. The friendships that faded without warning. The plans that suddenly fell apart right when you thought your life was finally about to move forward. You started wondering if you did something wrong. Maybe you missed your chance. Maybe you waited too long. Maybe life quietly moved on without you while you were still trying to hold yourself together. There was a moment recently when you almost gave up emotionally and nobody even knew it. Maybe it happened sitting alone in your car in a grocery store parking lot after a long shift. Maybe it happened at 1:48 in the morning while scrolling through old messages you should have deleted months ago. Maybe it happened while watching someone else live the life you prayed for while your own life felt painfully stuck. And what hurt the most was not even the disappointment. It was the silence. The silence after the prayers. The silence after asking for a sign. The silence after trying so hard to stay hopeful even when everything around you felt delayed. But what if the silence was not empty? What if something was happening underneath everything you could see? Because there are moments in life when a delay is not punishment. Sometimes the door closes because you were seconds away from walking into the wrong future. Sometimes the unanswered call, the canceled plan, the relationship that suddenly changed, the opportunity that disappeared, all of it happens for reasons you cannot understand yet. And the strange part is this. Deep down, you already know there were moments recently where something protected you without you fully realizing it. A strange feeling told you not to go somewhere. A sudden delay changed your plans. An uncomfortable conversation exposed someone's real intentions before they could hurt you more deeply. Little things. Quiet things. The kind of moments most people ignore. But tonight they are starting to connect in your mind differently. Because maybe this is not the ending you feared. Maybe this is the interruption that arrived just before you walked too far in the wrong direction. The strange thing is that the more you tried to ignore the feeling, the stronger it became during the quietest parts of your day. Not while you were busy answering emails or standing in line at the grocery store or forcing small talk with people who had no idea how tired you really felt. It always returned in silence. In the few seconds after shutting off the television. In the moment after setting your keys down on the kitchen counter and realizing nobody was waiting for you inside that apartment except your own thoughts. You kept telling yourself you would feel better once something finally changed. Once the right opportunity arrived. Once the pressure eased up. Once somebody finally understood what you had been carrying alone. But lately even hope started to feel exhausting. There was a night not long ago when you sat in your car outside your apartment building long after the engine was off because going upstairs somehow felt heavier than staying parked in the dark. The dashboard clock read 11:43 p.m. Rain tapped softly against the windshield while your phone lit up with notifications you did not even want to open. For a moment you just stared ahead, completely still, wondering how life became something you merely survived instead of something you actually felt connected to. And what scared you most was how normal that feeling had become. You started functioning on autopilot. Smiling automatically. Responding automatically. Telling people you were fine automatically. But deep down there was this growing sense that something in your spirit had become disconnected long before your life on the outside showed it. You noticed yourself pulling away from things that once mattered to you. Music did not feel the same. Conversations felt empty faster. Places that used to comfort you suddenly felt unfamiliar. Even your own routines started feeling strangely hollow, like you were replaying the same week over and over again, hoping something inside you would magically wake back up. Then little things began happening that you could not explain. Tiny interruptions that made no logical sense at first. You reached for your phone one night intending to text someone you miss deeply, but before you pressed send, a strange heaviness stopped you. Days later you discovered information that completely changed how you saw that person. Another time you became frustrated after being delayed in traffic for nearly 40 minutes on the interstate, only to learn there had been a major accident directly ahead during the exact window you would have arrived there. Coincidences, maybe. That is what you kept telling yourself. But somewhere inside, a quieter part of you wondered if life had been redirecting you more often than you realized. Because not every closed door felt random anymore. Not every delay felt meaningless. And that realization unsettled you almost as much as it comforted you. Especially when you started remembering all the moments you interpreted as rejection. The job you desperately wanted but never got. The relationship that collapsed right when you thought it was becoming serious. The plans that disappeared after months of effort. You mourned those things as losses. You carried them like evidence that you were forgotten somehow. But what if some of those endings were actually rescues that only made sense later? What if the silence you hated was never abandonment at all? Because lately, beneath all the exhaustion and confusion, there has been another feeling growing quietly underneath everything else. A feeling that your life may not be falling apart the way you once believed. A feeling that something has been trying to slow you down before you walked into something your heart was never meant to carry. You have been trying so hard to convince yourself that you are okay that you barely noticed how disconnected you have become from your own life. Every morning started feeling the same. The alarm. The coffee turning cold before you finished it. The drive to work with your thoughts louder than the radio. You kept moving because stopping for too long meant feeling everything you had been avoiding. And lately the questions inside your head have become impossible to silence. Why does everything feel delayed? Why does it seem like everyone else is moving forward while you stay trapped in the same emotional place? Why do the things you pray for seem to move farther away the harder you try to reach them? You never said these thoughts out loud because part of you felt guilty for even having them. You wanted to stay hopeful. You wanted to believe there was purpose in all of this. But some nights your faith felt more like exhaustion than peace. There was one evening that still lingers in your mind. You came home after one of the longest weeks you had experienced in months. The kind of week where every small inconvenience somehow felt personal. You dropped your keys onto the kitchen counter, kicked off your shoes, and stood there in complete silence while the refrigerator hummed softly in the background. No television. No music. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, you admitted something to yourself you had been trying to avoid. You were tired of pretending you were strong all the time. Tired of carrying disappointments nobody else knew about. Tired of hoping things would change while secretly preparing yourself for more disappointment instead. That was the moment your mind drifted backward through all the things that did not work out. The apartment you almost moved into before the deal unexpectedly fell through. The person who promised they would stay but slowly disappeared anyway. The opportunity you prayed over for weeks only to watch it go to somebody else at the last second. You replayed those memories over and over trying to understand what you did wrong. But what disturbed you most was not the losses themselves. It was the growing realization that every major disappointment seemed to arrive right before something unseen shifted your direction entirely. At first you called it bad luck. Then coincidence. But now you are not so sure anymore. Because some part of you has started noticing a pattern hidden beneath the confusion. Every time you thought your life was collapsing, something later revealed itself that you could not have known in the moment. The relationship that ended before deeper betrayal could happen. The friendship that faded before it became toxic to your peace. The opportunity you lost that would have placed you in an environment that slowly would have drained everything good inside you. None of those realizations came quickly. Most arrived painfully late, after nights of crying quietly into a pillow while wondering why you felt so abandoned. But tonight something feels different. Not solved. Not magically fixed. Just different. As if your perspective is beginning to shift in ways you cannot fully explain yet. Because what if the reason you feel so emotionally exhausted is not because you were forgotten? What if it is because your soul has been trying to survive a season your mind still does not fully understand? And what if the reason everything slowed down around you is because you were heading toward a version of your life that looked right on the surface but would have quietly destroyed your peace over time? The hardest thing to accept is that protection rarely feels comforting while it is happening. Sometimes it feels exactly like loss until enough time passes for you to finally see what you were being spared from. There are memories you keep returning to even when you tell yourself to move on from them. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because part of you is still searching for answers hidden inside those moments. You replay conversations while driving home at night with one hand on the steering wheel and the city lights blurring past your window. You revisit old decisions while standing in the shower staring at the floor, wondering if one different choice could have changed everything. And lately there is one thought that keeps following you everywhere. What if you misunderstood the meaning of what happened to you? Because for so long you labeled every closed door as proof that you were unwanted. Every delay felt personal. Every silence felt like abandonment. But the deeper you think about it, the more certain moments begin rearranging themselves differently in your memory. There was that afternoon months ago when you almost signed paperwork for something you believed would finally change your life. You remember sitting in the office feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while, imagining how different everything would soon become. Then out of nowhere the deal collapsed over something small and unexpected. You drove home furious that day. Embarrassed. Confused. You remember gripping the steering wheel at a red light feeling completely defeated, asking silently why things always seemed to fall apart right when they mattered most. But weeks later information surfaced that changed everything. Financial problems hidden beneath the surface. Tension between people that would have eventually pulled you into constant stress. What once looked perfect slowly revealed cracks you never could have seen in the beginning. And suddenly the thing you mourned started looking less like rejection and more like escape. That realization unsettled you because it forced you to question how many other moments in your life carried hidden protection disguised as disappointment. Even your relationships started looking different through that lens. There was someone you once begged life to keep close to you. Someone whose absence left a silence in your chest that lasted for months. You blamed yourself endlessly after they drifted away. You wondered what was wrong with you. Why you were never enough for people to stay fully committed. But as time passed, pieces of truth surfaced slowly. The mixed signals. The emotional distance you ignored. The way your peace quietly disappeared while trying to hold everything together alone. You started realizing that your exhaustion did not begin after they left. It began while you were trying to keep something alive that was already fading. And maybe that is why lately your soul has felt so conflicted. One part of you still mourns what you lost, while another part quietly knows you were being redirected away from things that would have broken you more deeply if they had lasted longer. The difficult part is that redirection almost never feels comforting in the moment it happens. It feels confusing. Lonely. Sometimes humiliating. Sometimes painfully silent. Especially when everyone around you seems to be moving forward while your own life feels suspended somewhere between endings and unanswered questions. But tonight you are beginning to sense something you could not fully recognize before. The possibility that not every interruption in your life came to punish you. Some arrived because you were seconds away from attaching yourself to futures that looked good from a distance but carried hidden weight your heart was never meant to carry. And maybe that is why certain things had to fall apart before you could see clearly enough to understand what was quietly trying to protect your peace all along. The hardest battles are the ones nobody else can see because from the outside your life still looks functional. You still show up. You still answer messages. You still laugh at the right moments during conversations. But internally something has been wearing down little by little, and lately you can feel the weight of it in places you never used to notice before. In the tightness across your shoulders when you wake up. In the way your chest sinks every Sunday night before another week begins. In the silence that fills the room after everyone else has gone to sleep and you are finally left alone with your thoughts again. There was a point where you stopped expecting things to improve and simply started hoping nothing else would fall apart. That shift happened quietly. No dramatic moment. No breakdown anyone could witness. Just a slow emotional exhaustion that settled into your life over time. You became tired of rebuilding your hope after every disappointment. Tired of telling yourself to stay patient while watching years pass differently than you imagined they would. And lately the loneliness has felt heavier because nobody fully understands how much energy it takes to keep pretending you are not discouraged. There are moments you still think about constantly even though you wish you could move past them. Like the night you sat alone on the edge of your bed with a half-packed suitcase beside you after making plans to leave town for a fresh start. You remember staring at the floor for nearly 20 minutes because something inside you suddenly felt unsettled. Nothing logical explained it. Everything about the move seemed perfect on paper. Better money. Better environment. Better opportunities. But the closer the departure date came, the heavier your spirit felt. Eventually the entire plan collapsed unexpectedly over circumstances outside your control. At the time it crushed you. You remember feeling embarrassed having to explain to people that you were staying after talking for months about leaving. But almost a year later you learned things about that situation you never could have known beforehand. The instability. The dishonesty behind certain promises. The emotional pressure waiting underneath what first appeared exciting and hopeful. And once again you found yourself facing the same uncomfortable realization. What if disappointment has been protecting you more often than you realized? Because the truth is you almost walked directly into situations that would have slowly drained the life out of you while convincing yourself they were blessings. That is the part nobody talks about. Sometimes what destroys people does not arrive looking dangerous. Sometimes it arrives disguised as exactly what they prayed for. And maybe that is why your life has felt so confusing lately. Deep down you sense there is meaning hidden underneath all these delays, but emotionally you are exhausted from trying to understand it while living through it. Some nights you still wonder if you are falling behind. You scroll through social media seeing engagements, promotions, smiling photos, new homes, growing families, and you quietly ask yourself why your own life feels paused in comparison. You wonder if you somehow missed your timing. If everyone else received clarity while you were left wandering through uncertainty. But what if your life is not behind schedule at all? What if you are standing in a season where things are being slowed down because the version of you entering the next chapter cannot be the same exhausted version that barely survived the last one? Because something inside you is changing even if the outside has not caught up yet. And maybe the reason this season feels so uncomfortable is because you are finally being pulled away from the futures that only looked good until you got close enough to see what they would have cost your peace. You are beginning to realize that exhaustion changes the way people see their own lives. After carrying disappointment for too long, you stop looking at delays as temporary and start seeing them as proof that nothing good is coming anymore. That is what slowly happened to you. At first you fought to stay optimistic. You told yourself things would improve soon. You believed the silence would eventually make sense. But after enough closed doors, enough nights sitting alone with unanswered thoughts, part of you quietly started giving up long before you admitted it out loud. The strange thing is that nobody around you noticed the exact moment your hope became fragile. You became skilled at hiding it. You still showed up for work. Still paid your bills. Still replied with, "I am doing okay," when people asked how you were doing. But internally there were nights when you felt completely disconnected from the person you used to be. Nights when you stared out your apartment window at passing headlights below and wondered how your life became something that felt so emotionally distant from you. There was one moment recently that keeps replaying in your mind. You were sitting at a small diner just after midnight, barely touching the food in front of you while rain pressed softly against the windows outside. Across the room a family laughed together while holiday music played quietly through old ceiling speakers. And for some reason that ordinary moment hit you harder than expected. Not because you were jealous exactly, but because it reminded you how deeply you missed feeling emotionally safe somewhere. You realized then that most of your exhaustion was not coming from work or responsibilities. It was coming from carrying uncertainty for too long without knowing where any of this was leading. You started wondering if maybe life had simply moved on without you. Maybe the opportunities were meant for other people. Maybe the peace you kept searching for was never actually coming. But even during those thoughts, little moments kept interrupting your despair in ways you could not explain. Songs playing at exactly the right moment. Random conversations that answered questions you never spoke aloud. Delays that irritated you at first but later protected you from situations you would have regretted deeply. It was almost as if something kept quietly redirecting your steps while refusing to explain why. And that silence frustrated you because part of you wanted certainty immediately. You wanted answers now, not months later after the pain already changed you. But what if immediate answers would have prevented you from becoming who you needed to be first? That possibility has been following you lately in quiet moments. Because looking back honestly, some of the things you once begged for would have eventually destroyed your peace. Some of the people you fought hardest to keep in your life were already slowly draining your spirit while convincing you that losing them would ruin you. Some opportunities looked exciting only because you could not yet see the pressure, instability, and emotional cost hiding underneath them. That is the painful truth about protection. While it is happening, it rarely feels loving. It feels confusing. It feels lonely. Sometimes it even feels cruel. Especially when you are standing in the middle of a season where nothing makes sense yet. But maybe clarity was never supposed to arrive all at once. Maybe it comes slowly, piece by piece, until eventually you realize your life was not being blocked the way you feared. It was being redirected away from futures that would have looked successful on the outside while quietly destroying your inner peace over time. And maybe that is why lately your spirit has felt suspended between exhaustion and awakening at the exact same time. There comes a point in every long season of waiting where the real battle is no longer external. It becomes internal. Quiet. Invisible. A war between the part of you that still wants to believe and the part of you that feels too tired to keep hoping. That is where you have been living lately. Somewhere between trust and emotional exhaustion. Somewhere between wanting to move forward and secretly expecting disappointment before anything even begins. You can feel it in the way you hesitate now. The way excitement no longer comes easily. Even when good things appear in front of you, there is a voice inside asking how long it will take before this disappears too. You hate that feeling because it is not who you used to be. There was a version of you who believed deeply in new beginnings. A version of you who could dream about the future without fear, quietly standing beside every hopeful thought. But after enough losses, enough delays, enough nights spent wondering why life kept pulling things away right when they started mattering to you, something inside became cautious. Guarded. You started protecting yourself emotionally before life even had the chance to hurt you again. There was one night recently where everything inside you nearly collapsed completely. You had spent the entire evening trying to distract yourself, scrolling mindlessly through videos, answering texts you barely cared about, pretending your mind was not spiraling underneath the surface. Around 2:06 in the morning you finally set your phone down and the silence in the room suddenly felt unbearable. You remember sitting at the edge of your bed with your head in your hands, staring at the floor while a wave of exhaustion hit you so deeply it almost felt physical. Not just tiredness. Soul level. Exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying invisible disappointment for too long without resolution. In that moment you seriously questioned everything. Your timing. Your choices. Your worth. You wondered if maybe the reason things never worked out was because you were simply asking life for things that were never truly meant for you. That thought frightened you because part of you almost accepted it. Almost surrendered to the idea that this emptiness would simply become your normal forever. But even in that moment something unexpected happened. Not a loud sign. Not a dramatic miracle. Just a strange calm entering the room so quietly you almost ignored it at first. Your breathing slowed. The panic loosened slightly. And for reasons you still cannot fully explain, a thought crossed your mind with unusual clarity. What if you are not being punished? You sat there in silence after that, letting the question settle deeper than you expected. Because the truth is, punishment was easier to believe than protection. At least punishment would explain why things hurt so much. Protection, on the other hand, forced you to consider that some of these painful endings may have actually been necessary interruptions. Necessary because the version of you from a year ago would have attached yourself to things that looked comforting but carried hidden damage underneath. Necessary because you were chasing futures based on loneliness instead of peace. Necessary because emotionally exhausted people often mistake temporary relief for destiny. And maybe that is why this season has felt so emotionally confusing. One part of you has been grieving the life you thought you were supposed to have by now, while another quieter part has slowly been waking up to the possibility that you were being guided away from things that would have cost you far more than you realized. The difficult part is that awakening rarely feels peaceful in the beginning. Sometimes it feels like losing everything familiar before understanding why it had to happen at all. The truth did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, almost painfully slowly, through moments that at first seemed too small to matter. A conversation overheard by accident. Information revealed months after a door closed. The sudden realization that certain people only valued you when you were emotionally available enough to carry their chaos. Piece by piece your perspective began changing, and with it came a realization that unsettled you more deeply than anything else so far. You were never actually being abandoned the way you believed. You were being redirected. That is the part nobody prepares you for. Sometimes the life you desperately wanted would have quietly destroyed your peace if it had arrived too early. And suddenly memories started connecting differently inside your mind. The relationship you mourned for nearly a year. The opportunity you cried over losing. The plans that collapsed at the last minute. For so long you viewed those moments as evidence that life was against you. But now another possibility stands in front of you, and it changes everything. What if some of those endings happened because you could not yet see what was hiding beneath the surface? There was a conversation not long ago that still lingers in your thoughts. You met an old friend for coffee one cold afternoon after months of barely speaking. During the conversation they casually mentioned details about a situation you once desperately wanted to be part of. The same opportunity you spent months grieving after it slipped away from you. But as they talked, you realized how unstable everything behind the scenes had become. Financial pressure. Constant conflict. Emotional burnout hidden underneath the appearance of success. You sat there quietly stirring your coffee while a strange feeling settled into your chest. Because for the first time, losing that opportunity no longer felt like failure. It felt like escape. And once that realization entered your spirit, it became impossible to ignore the pattern repeating throughout your life. Again and again, the things you mourned eventually revealed hidden weight you were never meant to carry. Some people left because they were no longer aligned with where your life was heading. Some delays happened because emotionally you were still trying to build your future from a place of loneliness instead of peace. Some unanswered prayers remained unanswered because the version of you asking for them could not yet see the damage hidden inside what looked desirable on the surface. That realization changed the way you looked at your waiting entirely. Because suddenly the silence did not feel empty anymore. It felt intentional. Not punishment. Preparation. Not rejection. Protection. And maybe that is why lately your soul has felt caught between grief and relief at the same time. Grief for the life you thought you were supposed to have by now. Relief because deep down you are beginning to understand that some of the things you begged for would have eventually broken your spirit in ways you could not recover from easily. The hardest thing to accept is that protection often arrives disguised as disappointment, because if you had seen the full truth too early, you probably would have fought against the very thing trying to save your peace. That is why certain doors had to close without explanation. That is why certain people disappeared even when you wanted them to stay. That is why your path slowed down while everyone else seemed to move ahead. Because you were never being prepared for just any future. You were being pulled away from futures built on emotional survival and redirected towards something quieter, steadier, and far more aligned with the peace your soul has secretly been searching for this entire time. Once your perspective begins changing, you start noticing how many things in your life were quietly redirected before they could fully damage you. And the strange part is that most of those moments did not feel comforting when they happened. They felt frustrating, embarrassing, lonely. You remember how angry you were after certain plans collapsed. How confused you felt watching people walk away without clear explanations. But now, standing where you are emotionally, something deeper is becoming impossible to ignore. There were forces shaping your direction long before you understood why your path kept changing unexpectedly. You can see it now in moments that once seemed random. Like the evening you almost agreed to reconnect with someone from your past because loneliness convinced you that familiar pain was better than uncertainty. You had the message typed out and your finger hovering over the screen, ready to send it. But something inside you hesitated. Not fear exactly. More like a quiet heaviness warning you to pause. Hours later you learned information that completely shifted your understanding of that person and the life they were actually living behind the version they showed publicly. If you had reached back out that night, you would have walked directly into emotional chaos disguised as comfort. And suddenly you realized how many times your life had been protected through hesitation itself. Through delays. Through intuition. Through circumstances changing before you could fully commit to the wrong direction. That realization became even harder to ignore after another moment happened just weeks later. You were driving home late after working overtime, exhausted and emotionally drained, when your usual route was unexpectedly blocked by construction. Irritated, you took a different road nearly 20 minutes out of your way. At first it felt like one more inconvenience in a season already full of them. But later that night you discovered there had been a serious accident directly along the route you would have been traveling during the exact time you normally passed through that area. You sat quietly after reading the news, staring at your phone while a chill moved through your chest. Not fear. Recognition. Recognition that maybe your life has been redirected more often than you realized. And maybe that is why your spirit has felt so emotionally conflicted lately. Because deep down you are beginning to understand that not everything you lost was meant to remain in your life permanently. Some things disappeared because they were assignments, not destinations. Some people left because their role in your life had already ended long before you were emotionally ready to release them. Some delays happened because you were emotionally attached to futures that looked good externally but carried hidden exhaustion underneath. The difficult part is that while you were living through these moments, you interpreted them as evidence that life was against you. You never imagined that protection could feel this uncomfortable. You never imagined that being redirected toward peace would first require so much uncertainty. But now something inside you is slowly awakening to a truth you once resisted. The closed doors were not there to destroy your future. They were there to prevent you from building your life around things that would have eventually destroyed your peace. And maybe that is why lately certain memories keep resurfacing unexpectedly. Not to torment you, but to help you finally see them differently. To help you understand that some of the greatest acts of protection in your life arrived disguised as disappointment, because if the full truth had been visible from the beginning, you would have fought desperately to hold on to things that were quietly leading you away from yourself. The deeper truth is not just that certain things were removed from your life. It is that you were changing while all of those delays were happening, even when you could not see it clearly at the time. That is why this season has felt so emotionally disorienting. You thought you were waiting for your circumstances to change, but something inside you was changing first. Quietly. Slowly. Through every disappointment, every unanswered question, every lonely drive home after midnight when your thoughts felt heavier than the silence around you. You did not notice it at first because transformation rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. Most of the time it feels like exhaustion. Like confusion. Like standing still while everyone else moves ahead. But looking back now, you can see that the version of you from a year ago would have accepted things simply because you were afraid of being alone. You would have chased opportunities because they looked impressive on the outside, even if they slowly destroyed your peace underneath. You would have tolerated emotional inconsistency from people because part of you believed losing them would hurt more than losing yourself. But something changed during this season of waiting. Pain forced you to slow down long enough to finally recognize what peace actually feels like. Not excitement. Not temporary validation. Peace. The kind that does not require you to abandon yourself just to keep something alive. There was a moment recently when this realization hit you unexpectedly. You were walking through a store late one evening picking up groceries after work. Nothing special about the night. Just fluorescent lights, quiet aisles, and soft music playing overhead. As you passed a couple arguing softly near the checkout line, something inside you suddenly remembered how emotionally chaotic your own life used to feel not long ago. The constant anxiety. The overthinking. The fear of losing people. The pressure to hold relationships together by yourself. And then another realization followed immediately behind it. That heaviness is no longer living inside you the same way it once did. The strange thing is that your external life has not fully transformed yet. You still have unanswered questions. You still do not know exactly where everything is leading. But internally something has shifted. You no longer feel desperate in the same way. And that matters more than you realize. Because desperation was what almost led you into futures built on fear instead of alignment. It almost convinced you to settle for temporary comfort over genuine peace. It almost convinced you to keep forcing doors open that were quietly trying to close for your protection. That is the twist you never expected. The delays were not only protecting you from the wrong situations. They were also transforming the version of you that would have chosen those situations in the first place. Suddenly the waiting takes on an entirely different meaning. It was never just about timing externally. It was about preparation internally. Because if certain things had arrived earlier, you would have accepted them from a place of emotional emptiness instead of clarity. And emotionally empty people often attach themselves to anything that temporarily relieves their loneliness. That is why some things had to remain delayed until your spirit became strong enough to recognize the difference between what looks good and what actually brings peace. The difficult part is that growth like this rarely receives applause from the outside world. Nobody sees the nights you stayed alone instead of returning to situations that would have reopened old wounds. Nobody sees the strength it took to stop chasing people who only valued versions of you that ignored your own needs. Nobody sees how many quiet internal battles you survived while your outer life still appeared unfinished. But something inside you knows now that this season was never empty the way you once believed. It was reshaping your heart slowly enough for you to finally stop confusing attachment with destiny. What surprises you now is not that your life changed slowly. It is that your spirit somehow survived long enough to notice the change at all. Because there were months where you honestly believed you were losing yourself. Months where every day felt emotionally gray no matter how hard you tried to stay positive. You woke up tired. You went to sleep overthinking. And somewhere in between, you kept carrying responsibilities while secretly wondering how much longer your heart could continue functioning this way. But something subtle has been happening recently, and it is different from the false excitement you used to chase. This feels quieter. Softer. Almost easy to miss if you are not paying attention carefully. You notice it in small moments first. The way your mind no longer races as intensely at night. The way certain memories no longer hurt with the same sharpness they once carried. The way you can now sit alone in silence without immediately feeling abandoned by life. That change matters more than you realize because peace does not usually enter dramatically. Most of the time it arrives gently after enough emotional noise finally leaves your life. There was a moment last weekend that captured this feeling perfectly. You woke up earlier than usual on a cold Saturday morning just after sunrise. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of distant traffic outside and the coffee machine humming softly in the kitchen. You stood by the window holding a warm mug in both hands while pale morning light slowly filled the room. And for the first time in a very long while, your mind was not consumed with panic about the future. The questions were still there, but they no longer controlled your breathing the way they used to. You realized then that healing had already started long before your circumstances fully changed. It started the moment your soul became tired of surviving through anxiety. Looking back now, you can see how much of your old life was built around fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being alone. Fear that if you stopped forcing things to work, nothing good would ever arrive. That fear kept you emotionally attached to situations long after they stopped bringing peace into your life. It convinced you that struggle was proof of love. It convinced you that constantly chasing clarity was normal. But slowly, through all the delays and silence, something inside you began learning a different way to exist. You began learning that peace does not beg to stay. Real alignment does not leave you emotionally exhausted every day. And the more you understand that truth, the more your past starts making sense differently. Certain people disappeared because your spirit was no longer meant to survive in environments built around emotional instability. Certain plans failed because they belonged to an older version of you who was still trying to earn worth through achievement and external validation. Even the waiting itself now feels different than it once did. It no longer feels like punishment. It feels like transition. As if life has been slowly untangling you from futures that no longer match who you are becoming. The strange thing is that from the outside, your life may still appear unfinished to other people. You still do not have every answer. Some doors are still closed. Some dreams are still forming quietly in the distance. But internally you are no longer standing in the same emotional place you once were. There is less desperation now. Less panic. Less need to force what is not naturally unfolding. And maybe that is the clearest sign of all that something sacred has been happening underneath the surface this entire time. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just slowly reshaping your spirit until peace finally started feeling more important than proving you were worthy of being chosen by things that were never truly meant to stay. Now when you look back at the last few years of your life, you no longer see only confusion. You see patterns. Quiet redirections. Invisible boundaries that appeared exactly when they needed to, even when they frustrated you at the time. The strange thing is that clarity did not arrive through one dramatic moment. It arrived gradually, through distance. Through time. Through finally becoming emotionally healthy enough to recognize what your exhausted heart once could not. You understand now that some things had to leave your life because you were trying to build your future around people and situations that only knew how to connect with the version of you that was constantly overextending yourself. You gave too much. You stayed too long. You ignored your own inner warnings because loneliness made almost anything feel better than emptiness. But eventually the silence forced you to sit with yourself long enough to hear what your spirit had been trying to say all along. There was an evening recently when this truth settled deeply inside you. You found yourself scrolling through old photos and messages from a chapter of your life that once consumed your emotions completely. Places you used to go. Conversations you once reread obsessively. Dreams you believed you could not survive without. And instead of feeling crushed the way you once did, you felt something else entirely. Distance. Not bitterness. Not resentment. Just clarity. You could suddenly see how much anxiety you carried during that season without even realizing it. How often you abandoned your own peace trying to hold on to things that were already slipping away naturally. You saw how exhausted your eyes looked in old photos. How much pressure you placed on yourself to make everything work. And for the first time, instead of blaming yourself for losing those things, you quietly thanked life for removing what your heart was too attached to release willingly. That realization changed something permanent inside you. Because now you understand that some endings were not signs you were unwanted. They were signs you were no longer meant to remain emotionally trapped in cycles that kept shrinking your spirit. And suddenly even the painful waiting periods make more sense. The nights you cried alone. The mornings you woke up with heaviness sitting in your chest before your feet even touched the floor. The seasons where nothing seemed to move no matter how hard you tried. None of it was meaningless. You were being slowed down long enough to finally separate peace from attachment. And that lesson may have saved your future more than you realize. Because if certain doors had opened too quickly, you would have walked through them carrying the same emotional wounds that once made you believe chaos was normal. You would have mistaken attention for connection. Temporary excitement for alignment. Fear of loneliness for love. But something inside you has changed now. You no longer crave things with the same desperation. You no longer feel the need to force clarity out of situations that naturally create confusion. And maybe that is why lately the silence no longer feels so heavy. It feels different now. Almost sacred in a way you could not understand before. Like a pause that was never meant to destroy you, but to slowly return you to yourself. The answers you once begged for did not arrive through loud signs or dramatic moments. They arrived through becoming someone emotionally strong enough to finally recognize that what was meant for your peace would never require you to constantly betray yourself just to keep it from leaving. Maybe the real reason this season felt so painful was because you thought you were losing your life when in reality you were slowly being led back toward yourself. Not the exhausted version of you who constantly chased reassurance from people who could not give it. Not the anxious version of you who measured your worth by how quickly things happened. Not the lonely version of you who accepted emotional confusion simply because silence felt unbearable. But the quieter version underneath all of that. The version of you that still existed before disappointment convinced you that peace was something reserved for other people. And now, standing here emotionally, you can finally see how much has changed even if your outer life still feels unfinished in certain ways. You no longer react to silence the same way. You no longer panic every time a door closes unexpectedly. You no longer feel the same desperation to force things to happen before they naturally unfold. That change did not happen overnight. It was formed through every delayed answer, every lonely drive home, every moment you sat awake staring at the ceiling wondering why life felt so uncertain. Those nights changed you slowly. Not by destroying you, but by teaching you how to survive without abandoning your own peace in the process. There is a calmness entering your life now that would have been impossible for the older version of you to understand. Not because every problem has disappeared. They have not. There are still unanswered questions. There are still things you hope for quietly. There are still moments where uncertainty brushes against your thoughts late at night. But underneath all of that, there is now a steadiness that did not exist before. A deeper understanding that not everything delayed was meant to hurt you. Some things were delayed because your spirit needed time to heal before receiving what was truly aligned with your peace. You can feel that truth now in ordinary moments. In the way your apartment no longer feels as empty as it once did. In the way mornings feel softer instead of immediately overwhelming. In the way you can now think about certain people or missed opportunities without collapsing emotionally afterward. Healing happened quietly while you were busy surviving. And maybe that is why this entire journey unfolded the way it did. If everything had arrived when you originally wanted it to, you would never have discovered how much of your old life was built around fear instead of peace. You would have kept forcing connections that drained you. Kept chasing futures that looked beautiful externally while quietly exhausting your spirit underneath. But now something inside you recognizes the difference. You understand that peace is not supposed to feel like constant anxiety. Real alignment is not supposed to leave you emotionally depleted every day. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this: you were never actually forgotten during the silence. Even in the moments where you felt completely alone, life was still moving around you in ways you could not yet see. Doors were quietly closing for reasons that would only make sense later. Delays were creating distance between you and futures that would have wounded you more deeply over time. And while you thought nothing was happening, your spirit was slowly learning how to stop searching for your worth in places that could never hold it safely. Maybe one day you will look back at this season not as the chapter where everything fell apart, but as the moment your life finally stopped leading you toward what only looked good temporarily and started leading you toward what would actually bring peace that lasts.